Just over a year and a half ago, the Phoenix Suns made a move that effectively freed the Washington Wizards from a significant financial burden. They took on the bulk of Bradley Beal's massive contract, one valued at a staggering $250 million, while sending back a package that included veteran guard Chris Paul, sharpshooter Landry Shamet, and an extensive collection of 10 pick swaps spanning from 2023 to 2030. Interestingly, Paul's time in Washington was short-lived, as he was swiftly dealt to the Golden State Warriors merely 12 days later. However, despite parting ways with their longtime franchise star, it appears the Wizards still harbored some level of interest in bringing Beal back. As the well-known saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and this sentiment seems to have resonated with Washington's front office. Reports indicate that as the NBA trade deadline approached, the Wizards were actively exploring the possibility of reacquiring their former All-Star guard. Veteran NBA insider Mark Stein shed light on the situation, revealing that Washington gave genuine consideration to the idea of reuniting with Beal. This revelation comes as a surprise, especially considering that it was the Wizards who originally signed Beal to the enormous 5-year, $251 million contract that also included a rare full no-trade clause. Stein elaborated on the matter by stating, "It turns out that the Washington Wizards, stunning as it sounds, gave real consideration to bringing Beal to the nation's capital. The Wizards, of course, are the team that gave Beal that monster 5-year, $251 million contract, adorned with a full no-trade clause in the first place. While there continues to be no indication that Beal would have blessed such a trade to go through, league sources say Washington gave the concept legitimate contemplation." On the surface, the idea of the Wizards pursuing Beal again seems rather puzzling. At present, the franchise finds itself in a state of flux, with no immediate prospects for success and a long-term outlook that is anything but promising. Given these circumstances, a return to their recent past, one that, while featuring Beal as their centerpiece, never yielded significant post-season success, doesn't appear to be the most logical course of action. However, when examining the financial and strategic aspects of such a move, Washington's potential interest starts to make more sense. Any team willing to absorb Beal's colossal contract would likely demand significant draft compensation in return as an incentive to take on such a massive financial commitment. For the Wizards, who are currently focused on rebuilding, the prospect of acquiring additional draft assets in exchange for facilitating Beal's return might have been an appealing one. Historically, franchises that have undergone rebuilding phases have often prioritized accumulating draft picks as a means to secure future talent. The Oklahoma City Thunder, for example, have famously leveraged draft capital to assemble a promising young roster, setting a precedent for other teams aiming for long-term success. Stein acknowledged the uncertainty regarding the precise nature of the draft compensation that would have been included in a potential deal. He noted, "The extent of the draft compensation sweeteners that would have been furnished to the Wizards as inducement for reacquiring Beal, had the talks gained any real traction, is not precisely known." However, given the trend of teams using draft picks as trade assets to facilitate roster-building efforts, it is likely that the Wizards would have insisted on a substantial package. Despite these discussions, trade negotiations never advanced to a serious stage. Multiple reports, including Stein's, confirmed that Beal never entertained the idea of waiving his no-trade clause at any point in the lead-up to the deadline. This ultimately solidified his position in Phoenix for the foreseeable future. Additionally, Beal's firm stance on remaining with the Suns had another major consequence. It significantly limited Phoenix's ability to make meaningful roster improvements. With their flexibility hindered and their trade assets tied up, the Suns were left struggling to execute any impactful moves to bolster their team in what increasingly appears to be a lost season. Looking at the broader NBA landscape, Beal's situation highlights the challenges that come with signing star players to massive contracts. Teams that commit to long-term, high-value deals often find themselves in precarious positions when performance expectations are not met. The Los Angeles Lakers faced a similar predicament with Russell Westbrook, whose contract became a major obstacle before he was eventually moved to the Utah Jazz and subsequently bought out. The inability to maneuver within salary cap constraints can severely impact a team's ability to remain competitive, a lesson Phoenix may now be learning the hard way. If, at some point in the future, Beal does return to Washington, there would be an added layer of historical significance to his homecoming. The prolific scorer is currently just 160 points shy of surpassing Elvin Hayes as the all-time leading scorer in Wizards franchise history. Whether or not such a milestone holds any weight for Beal remains uncertain. Throughout his career, particularly during his tenure in Washington, questions have often been raised about his true basketball motivations and long-term aspirations. If Beal were to return and claim the franchise scoring title, it would not only cement his legacy with the Wizards, but also offer a potential feel-good storyline for the organization, particularly during a period of rebuilding. Looking ahead, Beal's tenure with the Suns raises broader questions about the future of supermax contracts in the NBA. As teams increasingly recognize the financial constraints imposed by such deals, there could be a shift toward more flexible contract structures, emphasizing performance-based incentives rather than guaranteed salaries. If Phoenix struggles to achieve postseason success with Beal in their lineup, his contract may serve as yet another cautionary tale for teams considering similar commitments in the future. Moreover, Beal's situation sheds light on the delicate balance between player empowerment and team flexibility. While stars securing lucrative contracts and trade clauses have been a trend in recent years, front offices are now forced to navigate the repercussions of such deals. The shift in how franchises approach long-term contracts could influence future negotiations, as teams might demand greater trade flexibility and opt for structured contracts that allow them to remain adaptable in the face of underperformance or injuries. For now, Beal remains in Phoenix, and the Wizards' brief consideration of bringing him back has faded into the realm of hypothetical possibilities. However, as history has shown, the NBA landscape is ever-changing, and what seems improbable today could very well become a reality in the seasons to come. If the Suns fail to capitalize on their star-studded roster, trade discussions could resurface, and Beal's future might take yet another unexpected turn. Until then, his story remains an intriguing subplot in the ever-evolving narrative of the NBA.